Hey, how are you today? It's your friend Phil here, project management trainer and coach. I hope you're doing great. It's extremely chilly in Arizona this morning. But welcome to PMP Exam Drive Time, where we focus on our 40 days to PMP and CAPM exam success. So today's lesson is still on risk management. In our last lesson, we talked about perform quantitative risk analysis. And the next process that follows today is on planning risk responses. So let's go through the steps and the days we've done so far. We had the introduction, then we had day 1, plan risk management, day 2, identify risks, day 3, perform qualitative risk analysis, day 4, perform quantitative risk analysis, and now day 5 on plan risk responses. Planning risk responses is all about planning how to respond to risks. In a lot of firms, people often mention the word risk mitigation, or we're mitigating risks, and they use that as a catch-all for every risk response, but that's incorrect. We have 4 strategies for positive risks, one of which is risk mitigation, but you also have the accept approach, accepting a risk, transfer approach, transferring a risk, and you also have avoiding risks. So we have accept, avoid, transfer, and mitigate, the one people use quite a lot. Risk mitigation is a reduction of a risk impact or probability, or both. But on the other end of the spectrum is risk avoidance, which means doing something totally different from your original plan to avoid the risk, to prevent the risk from happening. There's a difference between reducing a risk and preventing a risk. For example, if there's a risk of an earthquake in a particular region, an avoid strategy would be building in a totally different place or doing something different that will avoid that risk. And the only way to avoid the risk of the earthquake would be to go somewhere else, or to not do it, or to scrap the entire project. But on the other end, when we have risks such as an earthquake, and you do things to reduce the probability, or well, in this case you can't, but reduce the impact of the risk, such as have a good plan in place, have a good health and safety plan, and listen out for what's going on, as far as predicting what could happen, as far as the earthquake. That would be more like a mitigation approach. You're trying to reduce the impact. If it does happen, you want people to be able to get to safety. You don't want them hurt. You want people to be aware of the impending doom. So risk mitigation, risk avoidance, they're different. Risk transfer would be transferring a risk to a third party. In some cases, it makes sense to. An example of transfer would be to insure yourself, to insure the company and the firm against such acts of God or unforeseen things. So risk transfer is used when it would make sense for you to purchase insurance, or for you to purchase performance bonds, or for you to transfer the work being done to a third party. Now that doesn't eliminate the risk, and depending on the risk strategy in place, as far as this company you've transferred it to, they may have a good risk approach or they may not. So transfer doesn't necessarily mean the risk goes away or it's well taken care of. It just means a different party is responsible for the risk. So we've talked about accept. No, we haven't talked about accept. We've talked about avoid, transfer, mitigate. Now for accept is really about saying nothing we can do. If it happens, it happens. Now under accept, we have 2 types of accept. The first one is exactly what I said. Oh, look at the sun. it's so bright here. Nothing we can do. Let's just go ahead as planned, and we're just going to accept it. If it happens, it happens. But we also have another type of risk response, which is called active accept. So we have passive acceptance. If it happens, it happens. But we also have active accept. And active accept means putting aside a sum of money or additional resources, planning additional time, putting some buffer in one place or another, be it in the area of resources or in the area of time or area of money, cost. You know, it really depends. But whatever your buffer is, that is looked at as active accept. Okay, so those are your strategies for positive negative risks or threats, I beg your pardon. We also have the 4 strategies for positive risks or opportunities. Now, I would like you to read up these. Again, we have something called accept when it comes to positive risks. We have share, which has to do with sharing the risk with a third party. It doesn't matter if you share the risk in a 70-30 way or 100-0 way or 0-1, you know, whatever the configuration is, whether you are given all or some of the risk, share is share. Then we have, like I said, accepting a positive risk, doing nothing to make it happen. Then we have enhance. Enhance has to do with increasing the likelihood of the positive risk happening, or increasing the impact of the positive risk happening, or of the positive risk when it does happen. And then we have, last but not least, exploit. And exploit has to do with doing everything possible to ensure that that positive upside risk does occur. In other words, there is no way that that risk is not going to manifest. You're doing everything. So it's the opposite of avoid. Avoid is doing everything to make sure that the negative risk does not happen, but exploit is doing everything possible to ensure that that positive risk does indeed happen. You're putting your best resources on it. You're giving the best quote, everything, you know. So I would advise that you read up about this in the PMBOK guide. There's so many different facets as far as these responses are concerned, and there's some examples in the PMBOK guide I would like you to go over. So for each strategy, read the strategy, understand it, internalize it, you know, think about the examples that have been given in the PMBOK guide, and as you read your materials, the study aids you have, look for examples of these. Hopefully you have those, and if you're on board our course, you know that we've got that exercise in one of our books where it asks you, what do you think this strategy is? Is this avoid? Is it transfer? Is it mitigate? Is it share? And so on. Okay, so that's what you want to do for planning risk responses. Now, when it comes to planning responses, sometimes we have to plan responses in an ad hoc fashion. What do I mean by that? I mean, the risk happens, but the thing about the risk that happens is you didn't even see it coming. It was an unforeseen risk that just crept up on you all of a sudden. The risk just happened. Now you're scrambling around looking for what to do to counteract the risk. That response type is known as a workaround. It's a response to a risk that was not planned at the time the risk occurred. It could also be looked at as a response to a risk that has occurred and its initial response strategy was not effective. There's also a couple more words I would like you to be aware of. The word fallback plan and the word contingency. We have a fallback plan and we also have a contingency plan, but the PMI look at these two as the same. These are used interchangeably in the world of the PMI. People often say, which one should I use first? Well, a fallback plan could be used first and then a contingency if both exist. If I was given a choice of those three, like, you know, do your original plan, then do your fallback plan, then do your contingency, that's the order I would take. But I do want you to be aware that in the PMBOK guide, these are used interchangeably. Contingency plan and fallback plan are the same. I have seen questions where both are options, and usually the fallback plan would be the plan that you execute, you carry out. It's something you had decided to do if your original plan failed, and if your fallback plan was not effective, then your contingency reserve could kick in. But again, just know that they're referred to as the same in the world of the PMI. So that's it for PMP exam drive time and our plan risk responses lesson. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Just make sure that you do all the work that I have. I'm going to be adding work incrementally. I'm going to be adding links to all these videos. So please look below, look for any of the open-ended questions or any of the terms that I have advised you to know by now. Make sure you know them. And I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson. Bye for now.